Hi there folks, it's Matt Hayson with this week's Market Wrap. Well, we're closing out February, the first 2 months of the property market for 2019. Plenty of good stuff happening in and around the market. But this week, I wanted to put the spotlight on the auction market because there's some very interesting statistics that I'm interested in delving into a little deeper. Let's look at last Saturday. 671 properties were scheduled to go under the hammer across Sydney. Now, as of Saturday afternoon, what we saw was 354 results were reported, 271 properties had actually sold, 89 were withdrawn, and that gave a preliminary clearance rate at 61%. I'm still confused, I can't work out 61% from that data, however, that's how Domain reported it. In my books, I look at it as 671 properties were auctioned, 271 sold. That gives me a clearance rate of 40.5%. But let's push on. Dr. Andrew Wilson, using Auction Insider, had some really bullish things to say about the property market, and particular the auction market, stating this: the home auction market is on the rise. He claimed that there was a clearance rate in the inner west at 83.9%, which is extremely bullish. I can tell you, whenever we're seeing a clearance rate above 80%, that would suggest to us it's a market that favours sellers, and you're seeing multiple people at auctions, which is not quite the case, and I'll get into that in a moment. He also claimed Sydney's inner suburban, high-price regions continue to produce generally strong results for sellers. That's very interesting. Now, last Saturday, our agents attended 29 auctions that were conducted right across the inner west market. Now, that's not all the properties that were put under the hammer, but it's certainly a very good sample. And here's the results that we saw. Now, of those 29 auctions, 5 were postponed, 9 withdrawn, 3 passed in, 8 sold prior, 4 actually sold under the hammer. Now, we had agents attend all of those auctions, and we didn't see any more than 2 registered bidders at those 4 particular auctions. Now, that gives us a clearance rate at 42%, which includes sold priors. Now, if you strip out sold priors and just look at simply under the hammer, from 29 auctions, that's a 15% clearance rate. Now, importantly as well, we tracked and monitored those 29 sales through the course of their 4 or 5 week auction campaign, and in 75% of the cases, we saw a downward correction in the price guide during the course of the campaign. Now, one thing that we can agree on from Dr. Andrew Wilson is that 30% less properties going under the hammer this year as opposed to last. But here's some other interesting information coming out from CoreLogic in terms of settled sales. Now, Sydney is down 20.3% in terms of the number of transactions which have actually settled, down from the 10-year average. In Melbourne, it's down 22.2%. So that's a pretty big drop. And we're also tracking towards the lowest number of transactions that we've seen recorded in Sydney or Melbourne in almost 2 decades. That gives you a real sense of the supply and demand. So what does all of this mean? Well, what it says to us is the auction clearance rate is really a bit of a myth. But I can't recall a time in the last 10 years where I've seen such a disparity between what's being reported and what's actually happening in reality. But it's important to note these things. Still, auction is the preferred method of sale for sellers. There is no doubt about it. The days on market for auction versus private treaty still favour auctions. What we are aware of right now is it's taking longer to sell a property at the moment. 78% of property which is presently online has been available for more than a month. So that just highlights that buyers are taking a little bit more time to assess the market, go through the financial procedures, and be in a position to make an unconditional contract. Now, here's something important about the market at the moment. There's lots to talk about price adjustments and price corrections and what have you. But if you're speaking with buyers and sellers that are actually trading in the current environment, they're focused on one key thing and one key thing only, and that is changeover costs. Now, sellers are aware that they may not be achieving a price that could have been obtained 2 years ago, but they also know they're buying a property which is representing better value. Therefore, their changeover costs in the move process is net positive, and you can understand why. There's less competition on the market with buyers, and there's also less you're paying for stamp duty and things like that. So this is an ideal time to actually get out in the market and find that right property. And that leads us into this weekend, which is the first weekend of March. I suspect March is going to be a pretty busy month because next month in April, we've got lots of things: school holidays, Anzac Day, Easter. So this will be a pretty critical month for the property market, and we'll continue to watch it. And we look forward to seeing you out and about. See you next week.